sort of Halloween story. If you're ready with the Mickey Sorcerer, just listen to me and let's go on. This is the book. We are arrived at chapter 8, Ginger's Army of Revolt. Tip was so anxious to rejoin his man Jack and so hoarse that he walked a full half the distance to the Emerald City without stopping to rest. Then he discovered that he was hungry and the crackers and cheese he had provided for the journey had all been eaten. While wondering what he should do in this emergency, he came upon a girl sitting by the roadside. She wore a costume that struck the boy as being remarkably brilliant, her silken waist being of emerald green and a skirt of 4 distinct colors: blue in front, yellow at the left side, red at the back, and purple at the right side. Fastening the waist in front were 4 buttons, the top one blue, the next yellow, a third red, and the last purple. The splendor of this dress was almost barbaric, so Tip was fully justified in staring at the gown for some moments before his eyes were attracted by the pretty face above it. Yes, the face was pretty enough, he decided, but it wore an expression of discontent coupled to a shade of defiance or audacity. While the boy stared, the girl looked upon him calmly. A lunch basket stood beside her. It's Dorothy, and she held a dainty sandwich in one hand and a hard-boiled egg in the other, or maybe not, eating with an evident appetite that aroused Tip's sympathy. He was just about to ask a share of the luncheon when the girl stood up and brushed the crumbs from her lap. "There," said she, "it is time for me to go. Carry that basket for me and help yourself to its contents if you are hungry." Tip seized the basket eagerly and began to eat, following for a time the strange girl without bothering to ask questions. She walked along before him with swift strides, and there was about her an air of decision and importance that led him to suspect she was a great personage. Finally, when he had satisfied his hunger, he ran up beside her and tried to keep pace with her swift footsteps. A very difficult feat, for she was much taller than he and evidently in a hurry. "Thank you very much for the sandwiches," said Tip, as he trotted along. "May I ask your name?" "I am General Ginger," was the brief reply. "Oh," said the boy, surprised. "What sort of a general?" "I command the army of revolt in this war," answered the general with unnecessary sharpness. "Oh," he again exclaimed, "I didn't know there was a war." "You were not supposed to know it," she returned, "for we have kept it a secret, and considering that our army is composed entirely of girls," she added with some pride, "it is surely a remarkable thing that our revolt is not yet discovered." "It is indeed," acknowledged Tip, "but where is your army?" "About a mile from here," said General Ginger. "The forces have assembled from all parts of the land of Oz at my express command, for this is the day where we are to conquer His Majesty, the Scarecrow, and wrest from him the throne. The army of revolt only awaits—" "Oh, we have a visitor." "My coming to march upon the Emerald City. Come here with us." "Well," declared Tip, drawing a long breath, "this is certainly a surprising thing. May I ask why you wish to conquer His Majesty the Scarecrow?" "Because the Emerald City has been ruled by men long enough for one reason," said the girl. Moreover, the city glitters with Moreover, the city glitters with beautiful gems, which might far better be used for rings, bracelets, and necklaces. And there is enough money in the king's treasury to buy every girl in our army a dozen new gowns. So we intend to conquer the city and run the government to suit ourselves. Junior spoke these words with an eagerness and decision that proved she was in earnest. But war is a terrible thing, said Tip thoughtfully. This war will be pleasant, replied the guard cheerfully. Many of you will be slain, continued the boy in a low voice. Oh no, said Ginger. One man will oppose a girl or dare to harm her, and there is not an ugly face in my entire army. Tip laughed. Perhaps you are right, said he, but the guardian of the gate is considered a faithful guardian, and the king's army will not let the city be conquered without a struggle. The army is old and feeble, replied General Ginger scornfully. His strength has all been used to grow whiskers, and his wife has such a temper that she has already pulled more than half of them out by the roots. When the wonderful wizard reigned, the soldier with the green whiskers was a very good royal army, for people feared the wizard, but no one is afraid of the scarecrow. So his royal army don't count for much in time of war. After this conversation, they proceeded some distance in silence, and before long reached a large clearing in the forest, where fully 400 young women were assembled. These were laughing and talking together, as gaily as if they had catered for a picnic, instead of a war of conquest. They were divided into 4 companies, and Tip noticed that all were dressed in costumes similar to that worn by General Ginger. The only real difference was that while those girls from the Munchkin country had the blue strip in front of their skirts, those from the country of the Quaidlings had the red strip in front, and those from the country of the Winkies had the yellow strip in front, and the Gillikin girls wore the purple strip in front. All had green waists representing the Emerald City they intended to conquer, and the top button on each waist indicated by its color which country the wearer came from. The uniforms were jaunty and becoming, and quite effective when massed together. Tip thought this strange army bore no weapons whatever, but in this he was wrong, for each girl had stuck through the knot of her back hair 2 long, glittering knitting needles. General Ginger immediately mounted the stump of a tree and addressed their army. Friends, fellow citizens, and girls, she said, we are about to begin our great revolt against the man of odds. We march to conquer the Emerald City, to dethrone the Scarecrow King, to acquire thousands of gorgeous gems, to rifle the royal treasury, and to obtain power over our former oppressors. Hurrah! Said those who had listened. But Tip thought most of the army was too much engaged in chattering to pay attention to the words of the general. The command to march was now given, and the girls formed themselves into 4 bands or companies and set off with eager strides toward the Emerald City. The boy followed after them, carrying several baskets and wraps and packages, which various members of the army of revolt had placed in his care. It was not long before they came to the green granite walls of the city and halted before the gateway. The guardian of the gate at once came out and looked at them curiously, as if a circus had come to town. He carried a bunch of keys swung around his neck by a golden chain. His hands were thrust carelessly into his pockets, and he seemed to have no idea at all that the city was threatened by rebels. Speaking pleasantly to the girls, he said, "Good morning, my dears. What can I do for you?" "Surrender, instantly," answered General Ginger, standing before him and frowning as terribly as her pretty face will allow her to. "Surrender!" echoed the man, astounded. "Why? It's impossible. It's against the law. I never heard of such a thing in my life." "Still, you must surrender," exclaimed the general, fiercely. "We are revolting." "You don't look it," said the guardian, gazing from one to another admiringly. "But we are," cried the ginger, stamping her foot impatiently, "and we mean to conquer the Emerald City." "Good gracious," returned the surprised guardian of the gates, "what a nonsensical idea! Go home to your mothers, my good girls, and milk the cows and bake the bread. Don't you know it's a dangerous thing to conquer a city?" "We are not afraid," responded the general, and she looked so determined that it made the guardian uneasy. So he rang the bell for the soldier with the green whiskers, and the next minute was sorry he had done so, for immediately he was surrounded by a crowd of girls who drew the knitting needles from their hair and began jabbing them at the guardian with the sharp points dangerously near his fat cheeks and blinking eyes. The poor man howled loudly for mercy and made no resistance when Ginger drew the bunch of keys from around his neck. Followed by her army, the general now rushed to the gateway, where she was confronted by the Royal Army of Oz, which was the other name for the soldier with the green whiskers. "Halt!" he cried, and pointed his long gun full in the face of the leader. Some of the girls screamed and ran back, but General Ginger bravely stood her ground and said reproachfully, "Why, how now? Will you shoot a poor, defenseless girl?" "No," replied the soldier, "for my gun isn't loaded." "Not loaded?" "No, for fear of accidents, and I've forgotten where I hid the powder and shot to load it with. But if you wait a short time, I'll try to hunt them up." "Don't trouble yourself," said Ginger cheerfully. Then she turned to her army and cried, "Girls, the gun is loaded!" "Hooray!" screamed the rebel, delighted at this good news, and they proceeded to rush upon the soldier with the green whiskers in such a crowd that it was a wonder they didn't stick the knitting needles into one another. But the Royal Army of Oz was too much afraid of women to meet the onslaught. He simply turned about and ran with all his might through the gate and toward the royal palace, while General Ginger and her mob flocked into the unprotected city. In this way was the Emerald City captured without a drop of blood being spilled. The army of revolt had become an army of conquerors. Chapter 9. The Scarecrow Plans an Escape. Tip slipped away from the girls and followed swiftly after the soldier with the green whiskers. The invading army entered the city more slowly, for they stopped to dig emeralds out of the walls and paving stones with the points of their knitting needles. So the soldier and the boy reached the palace before the news had spread that the city was conquered. The Scarecrow and Jack Pumpkinhead were still playing at quoits in the courtyard when the game was interrupted by the abrupt entrance of the Royal Army of Oz, who came flying in without his hat or gun, his clothes in sad disarray, and his long beard floating a yard behind him as he ran. "Tally one for me," said the Scarecrow calmly. "What's wrong, my man?" he added, addressing the soldier. "Oh, your Majesty, your Majesty, the city is conquered," gasped the royal army, who was all out of breath. "This is quite sudden," said the Scarecrow, "but please go and bar all the doors and windows of the palace, while I show this Pumpkinhead how to throw a quad." The soldier hastened to do this, while Tip, who had arrived at his heels, remained in the courtyard to look at the Scarecrow with wondering eyes. His Majesty continued to throw the quads as coolly as if no danger threatened his throne, but the Pumpkinhead, having caught sight of Tip, ambled towards the boy as fast as his wooden legs could go. "Good afternoon, noble parent," he cried delightedly. "I'm glad to see you are here. The terrible horse ran away with me." "I suspected it," said Tip. "Did you get hurt? Are you cracked at all?" "No, I arrived safely," answered Jack, "and His Majesty has been very kind indeed to me." At this moment the soldier with the green whiskers returned, and the Scarecrow asked, "By the way, who has conquered me?" "A regiment, of course, gathered from the four corners of the land of Oz," replied the soldier, still pale with fear. "But where was my standing army at the time?" inquired His Majesty, looking at the soldier gravely. "Your standing army was running," answered the fellow honestly, "for no man could face the terrible weapons of the invaders." "Well," said the Scarecrow, after a moment thought, "I don't mind much the loss of my throne, for it is a tiresome job to rule over the Emerald City, and this crown is so heavy that it makes my head ache. But I hope the conquerors have no intention of injuring me, just because I happen to be the king." "I heard them say," remarked Tip with some hesitation, "that they intend to make a rug carpet of your outside and stuff their sofa cushions with your inside." "Then I am really in danger," declared His Majesty positively, "and it will be wise for me to consider a means to escape. Where can you go?" asked Jack Pumpkinhead. "Why, to my friend the Tin Woodman, who rules over the Winkies and calls himself their emperor," was the answer. "I am sure he will protect me." Tip was looking out the window. "The palace is surrounded by the enemy," said he. "Oh, the palace is surrounded by the enemy," said he. "It is too late to escape. They will soon tear you to pieces." The Scarecrow sighed. "In an emergency," he announced, "it is always a good thing to pause and reflect. Please excuse me while I pause and reflect." "But we also are in danger," said the Pumpkinhead anxiously. "If any of these girls understand cooking, my end is not far off." "Nonsense," exclaimed the Scarecrow. "They're too busy to cook, even if they know how." "But should I remain here a prisoner for any length of time?" protested Jack. "I'm liable to spy." "Ah, then you will not be fit to associate with," returned the Scarecrow. "The matter is more serious than I suspected." "You," said the Pumpkinhead gloomily, "are liable to live for many years. My life is necessarily short, so I must take advantage of the few days that remain to me." There, don't worry," answered the Scarecrow soothingly. "If you'll keep quiet long enough for me to think, I'll try to find some way for us all to escape." So the others waited in patient silence, while the Scarecrow walked to a corner and stood with his face to the wall for a good 5 minutes. At the end of that time, he faced them with a more cheerful expression upon his painted face. "Where is the horse you rode here?" he asked the Pumpkinhead. "Why, I said he was a jewel, and so your man locked him up in the royal treasury, said Jack. It was the only place I could think of, your majesty, added the soldier, fearing he had made a blunder. It pleases me very much, said the scarecrow. Has the animal been fed? Oh, yes. I gave him a heaping peck of sawdust. Excellent, cried the scarecrow. Bring the horse here at once. The soldier hastened away, and presently they heard the clattering of the horse's wooden legs upon the pavement as he was led into the courtyard. His Majesty regarded the steed critically. It doesn't seem especially graceful, he remarked musingly, but I suppose he can run? He can indeed, said Tip, gazing upon the horse admiringly. Then, bearing us upon his back, he must make a dash through the ranks of the rebels and carry us to my friend the Tin Woodman, announced the scarecrow. He can carry 4, objected Tip. No, but he may be induced to carry 3, said his Majesty. I shall therefore leave my royal army behind, for from the ease with which he was conquered, I have little confidence in his powers. Still, he can run, declared Tip, laughing. I expected this blow, said the soldier sulkily, but I can bear it. I shall disguise myself by cutting off my lovely green whiskers. And, after all, it is no more dangerous to face those reckless curs than to ride this fiery, untamed wooden horse. Perhaps you are right, observed his Majesty, but, for my part, not being a soldier, I am fond of danger. Now, my boy, you must mount first, and please sit as close to the horse's neck as possible. Tip climbed quickly to his place, and the soldier and the scarecrow managed to hoist the Pumpkinhead to a seat just behind him. There remained so little space for the king that he was liable to fall off as soon as the horse started. Fetch a clothesline, said the king to his army, and tie us all together. Then, if one falls off, we will all fall off. And while the soldier was gone for the clothesline, his Majesty continued, It is well for me to be careful, for my very existence is in danger. I have to be as careful as you do, said Jack. Not exactly, replied the scarecrow, for if anything happened to me, that would be the end of me. But if anything happened to you, they could use you for seed. The soldier now returned with a long line and tied all 3 firmly together, also lashing them to the body of the sawhorse. So there seemed little danger of their tumbling off. Now throw open the gates, commanded the scarecrow, and we will make a dash to liberty or to death. The courtyard in which they were standing was located in the center of the great palace, which surrounded it on all sides. But in one place a passage led to an outer gateway, which the soldier had barred by order of his sovereign. It was through this gateway his Majesty proposed to escape, and the royal army now led the sawhorse along the passage and unbarred the gate, which swung backward with a loud crash. Excuse me a second. Now, said Tip to the horse, you must save us all. Run as fast as you can for the gate of the city, and don't let anything stop you. All right. Answered the sawhorse gruffly, and dashed away so suddenly that Tip had to gasp for breath and hold firmly to the post he had driven into the creature's neck. Several of the guards who stood outside guarding the palace were knocked over by the sawhorse's mad rush. Others ran screaming out of the way, and only one or two jabbed their knitting needles frantically at the escaping prisoners. Tip got one small prick in his left arm, which smarted for an hour afterward, but the needles had no effect upon the scarecrow or Jack Pumpkinhead, who never even suspected they were being prodded. As for the sawhorse, he made a wonderful record, upsetting a fruit cart, overturning several meek-looking men, and finally bowling over the new guardian of the gate, a fussy little fat woman appointed by General Ginger. Nor did the impetuous charger stop them. Once outside the walls of the Emerald City, he dashed along the road to the west with fast and violent leaps that shook the breath out of the boy and filled the scarecrow with wonder. Jack had ridden at this mad rate once before, so he devoted every effort to holding with both hands his pumpkin head upon his stick, enduring in time the dreadful jolting with the courage of a philosopher. Slow him up, shouted the scarecrow. My straw is all shaking down into my legs. But Tip had no breath to speak, so the sawhorse continued his wild career unchecked and with unabated speed. Presently they came to the banks of a wide river, and without a pause the wooden steed gave one final leap and launched them all in midair. Amore, vieni. Che? Vieni. Eccola. We have a visit. Ciao, mignolina. A second later, they were rolling, splashing, oh, piccolino, and bobbing about in the water, the horse struggling frantically to find the rest for his feet, and his riders being first plunged beneath the rapid current and then floating upon the surface like corks. Our next chapter is chapter 10, The Journey to the Tin Woodman. Tip was well soaked and dripping water from every angle of his body, but he managed to lean forward and shout in the ear of the swords. Keep still, you fool! Keep still! The horse at once ceased struggling and floated calmly upon the surface, his wooden body being as buoyant as a raft. What does that word fool mean? Inquired the horse. It is a term of reproach, answered Tip, somewhat ashamed of the expression. I only use it when I am angry. Then it pleases me to be able to call you a fool in return, said the horse, for I did not make the river, nor put it in our way. So only a term of reproach is fit for one who becomes angry with me for falling into the water. That is quite evident, replied Tip. So I will acknowledge myself in the wrong. Then he called out the pumpkin head. Are you all right, Jack? There was no reply. So the boy called oh, Mattarell, to the king. Are you all right, your majesty? Marie? The scarecrow groaned. I am all wrong somehow, he said in a weak voice. How very wet this water is. Tip was bound so tightly by the cord that he could not turn his head to look at his companions. So he said to the swords, paddle with your legs toward the shore. The horse obeyed, and although their progress was slow, they finally reached the opposite river bank at a place where it was low enough to enable the creatures to scramble upon dry land. With some difficulty, the boy managed to get his knife out of his pocket and cut the cords that bound the riders to one another and to the wooden horse. He heard the scarecrow fall to the ground with a mushy sound, and then he himself quickly dismounted and looked at his friend Jack. The wooden body, with its gorgeous clothing, still sat upright upon the horse's back, but the pumpkin head was gone. Oh my God! You see, this is the story of Jack Pumpkinhead, the pumpkin riding the horse, as in the story. But that was like sort of a horror story instead. This is the origin. I don't know if this author to have invented it before. So the wooden body, with its gorgeous clothing, still sat upright. Wait, he heard the scarecrow fall to the ground with a mushy sound, and then he himself quickly dismounted and looked at his friend Jack. The wooden body, with its gorgeous clothing, still sat upright upon the horse's back, but the pumpkin head was gone, and only the sharpened stick that served for the neck was visible. As for the scarecrow, the straw in his body had shaken down with a jolting and baked itself into his legs and the lower part of his body, which appeared very plump and round, while his upper half seemed like an empty sack. Upon his head, the scarecrow still wore the heavy crown, which had been sewed on to prevent his losing it, but the head was now so dumb and limp that the weight of the golden jewels sagged forward and crushed the painted face into a mass of wrinkles that made him look exactly like a Japanese pug dog. Tip would have laughed had he not been so anxious about his man Jack, but the scarecrow, however damaged, was still there, while the pumpkin head that was so necessary to Jack's existence was missing. So the boy seized a long pole that fortunately lay near at hand and anxiously turned again toward the river. Far out upon the waters, he sighted the golden hue of the pumpkin, which gently bobbed up and down with the motion of the waves. At that moment he was quite out of Tip's reach, but after a time he floated nearer and still nearer, until the boy was able to reach it with his pole and draw it to the shore. Then he brought it to the top of the bank, carefully wiped the water from his pumpkin face with his handkerchief, and ran with it to Jack, and replaced the head upon the man's neck. Dear me, were Jack's first words. What a dreadful experience. I wonder if water is liable to spoil pumpkins? Tip did not think a reply was necessary, for he knew that the scarecrow also stood in need of his help. Oh, vieni, vieni. Oh, you did it. So he carefully removed the straw from the king's body and legs and spread it out in the sun to dry. Oh, Gina, oh, Colina. The wet clothing he hung over the body of the horse. The wet clothing he hung over the body of the horse. If water spoils pumpkins, observed Jack, with a deep sigh, then my days are numbered. I have never noticed that the water spoils pumpkins, returned Tip, unless the water happens to be boiling. If your head isn't cracked, my friend, you must be in fairly good conditions. Oh, my head isn't cracked in the least, declared Jack, more cheerfully. Then don't worry, retorted the boy. Care never once killed a cat. Then, said Jack seriously, I am very glad indeed that I am not a cat. The sun was fast drying their clothing, and Tip stirred up His Majesty's straw so that the warm rays might absorb the moisture and make it as crisp and dry as ever. When this had been accomplished, he stuffed the scarecrow into symmetrical shape, smoothed out his face so that he wore his usual gay and charming expression. Thank you very much, said the monarch brightly, as he walked about and found himself to be well balanced. There are several distinct advantages in being a scarecrow, for if one has friends near at hand to repair damages, nothing very serious can happen to you. I wonder if hot sunshine is liable to crack pumpkins, said Jack with an anxious ring in his voice. Not at all, not at all, replied the scarecrow gaily. All you need fear, my boy, is old age. When your golden youth has decayed, we shall quickly part company. But you needn't look forward to it. We'll discover the fact ourselves and notify you. But come, let us resume our journey. You liking the story, Mother? I am anxious to greet my friend the Tin Woodman. So they remounted the sawhorse, Tip holding to the post, the Pumpkinhead clinging to Tip, and the scarecrow with both arms around the wooden form of Jack. Go slowly, for now there is no danger of pursuit, said Tip to his steed. All right, responded the creature in a voice rather gruff. Aren't you a little horse? Asked the Pumpkinhead politely. The sawhorse gave an angry prance and rolled out naughty eye backward toward Tip. See here, he growled. Can't you protect me from insult? To be sure, answered Tip soothingly. I am sure Jack meant no harm, and it will not do for us to quarrel. You know, we must all remain good friends. I'll have nothing more to do with that Pumpkinhead, declared the sawhorse viciously. He loses his head too easily to sweet me. This seemed no fitting reply to his speech, so for a time they rode along in silence. After a while, the scarecrow remarked, This reminds me of old times. It was upon this grassy knoll that I once saved Dorothy from the stinging bees of the Wicked Witch of the West. Do stinging bees injure pumpkins? Asked Jack, glancing around fearfully. They are all dead, so it doesn't matter, replied the scarecrow. And here is where Nick Chopper destroyed the Wicked Witch's grey wolves. Who was Nick Chopper? Asked Tip. That is the name of my friend the Tin Woodman, answered His Majesty. And here is where the winged monkeys captured and bound us, and flew away with little Dorothy, he continued, after they had travelled a little way farther. Do winged monkeys ever eat pumpkins? Asked Jack with a shiver of fear. I do not know, but I have little cause to worry, for the winged monkeys are now the slaves of Glinda the Good, who owns the golden cap that commands their services, said the scarecrow reflectively. Then the stuffed monarch became lost in thought, recalling the days of past adventures, and the sawhorse rocked and rolled over the flower-strewn fields, and carried his riders swiftly upon their way. Twilight fell, by and by, and then the dark shadows of night. So Tip stopped the horse, and they all proceeded to dismount. I'm tired out, said the boy, yawning wearily, and the grass is soft and cool. Let us lie down here and sleep until morning. I can't sleep, said Jack. Where are you going? Oh, we see your tail. I never do, said the scarecrow. I do not even know what sleep is, said the sawhorse. Still, we must have a consideration for this poor boy, who is made of flesh and blood and bone, and gets tired," suggested the Scarecrow in his usual thoughtful manner. "I remember it was the same way with little Dorothy. We always had to sit through the night while she slept." "I'm sorry," said Tip meekly, "but I can't help it, and I'm dreadfully hungry too." "Here is a new danger," remarked Jack gloomily. "I hope you are not fond of eating pumpkins." "Not unless they're stewed and made into pies," answered the boy, laughing. "So have no fears of me, friend Jack." "What a coward the Pumpkinhead is," said the Sawhorse scornfully. "You might be a coward yourself if you knew you were liable to spoil," retorted Jack angrily. "There, there," interrupted the Scarecrow. "Don't let us quarrel. We all have our weaknesses, dear friends, so we must strive to be considerate of one another. And since this poor boy is hungry, you're hungry too." "Oh, Piccolino, oh, Piccolina." She's squishy and smashy. Meow. "And since this poor boy is hungry and has nothing whatever to eat, let us all remain quiet and allow him to sleep. For it is said that in sleep a mortal may forget even hunger." "Thank you," exclaimed Tip gratefully. "Your Majesty is fully as good as you are wise, and that is saying a good deal." He then stretched himself upon the grass, and using the stuffed form of the Scarecrow for a pillow, was presently fast asleep. Understood, Angel? And with this, we finish for today. This is my bookmark. You like it, Angel? Say goodbye to everyone. Have a good night. Look here. Have a good night. Or a good day, whichever hour of the day you're listening. Bye-bye.